Yeah, so we're pre-recording this conversation. It's around 6:30 p.m. on August 20th. Typically, we have a live audience, but because we are planning our upcoming Puerto Rico Clean Energy Week on September 15th and 16th, we're pre-recording all of our segments for August. So welcome everybody who's going to be listening to this after the fact. I'm Sam Tallman, Director of Energy Services at Green Power Technologies Puerto Rico and co-founder here at the Puerto Rico Energy Forum. We will gladly share more information about our upcoming event in September in the show notes and make sure that everybody has access to a registration link and support our upcoming event. It's going to be 2 days of phenomenal panels and energy conversations related to Puerto Rico that we think you can't get anywhere else. And so if you're not registered, get registered. If you want to see the agenda, take a look online and reach out if you want to learn more information, participate, be a sponsor, or invite your friends. So on that note, we'll jump in. I'm speaking tonight with Eduardo Pagán, who is Vice President of Tote Maritime and a long time a participant in all things economic activity and economic development in Puerto Rico. So Eduardo, welcome. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Sam. It's actually a pleasure to be with you at this time. Allow me to mention that I was promoted a few months ago to the position of a corporate affairs for the Toll Group, and I do quite a bit of a work for the parent company for Social as well on a corporate affairs matter that relates to the Caribbean too.
Yeah, no, I think that's an important clarification. Thank you for making it. We're going to get into some of the ancillary activities that you're participating in here in a moment. First, just opening question, why did it take the shipping industry so long to power cargo vessels with natural gas?
That's a very good question, Sam. I think the decision was probably based on the significant interests that were created by the biggest maritime companies in the world, particularly when we made the decision about using LNG as the main fuel for our new vessels. At that time, close to 50% of the world volumes in containers were concentrated in four companies. And when you look at those numbers today, those very same four companies do 70% of the world volumes. So was there a real, interest on them on switching over to an alternative fuel at that time? I think they had some significant critical mass around the other fuels that probably they were not considering. In our case, we were a very small company when you look at us in the totality of container ships in the world. Well, we felt it was actually the right time for doing that transition. It was about moving ahead of the IMO requirements on lower sulfur emissions. Even though as a domestic carrier we are not subject to the IMO standard, we felt that developing or engaging on a new technology that would help us, do even better of what the new standards on IMO for emissions would be the right thing to do in that sense. We benchmark, we study a lot, what was happening with the LNG use on ferries in Europe. We try to understand the best people working on possible breakthrough technology for using LNG as the main fuel. So there was a lot of pre-work before we actually made a decision about moving with a new technology that would make a significant impact. Because at the end of the day, we became the very first company in the world moving container ships using LNG as the main fuel, having also the capability to run in marine diesel in case of any hiccup with the LNG. I think was a very paramount decision as well. At that time, we were the first one, and there were a number of lessons and learnings that we had to go through as we deploy the new tonnage, and indeed, we found that to be a very important resilience element to make sure that the transition to a new fuel wouldn't create any service issues in that sense.
And we've talked about this with regards to logistics hubs on the south side of the island and other opportunities. There has to be economic sense in this decision as well, right? And so there's benefit obviously from meeting certain IMO standards and emission reduction value in that changeover. What did it mean in terms of fuel efficiency or cost reduction or even, I mean, a lot of the way that we think about logistics is
I
how does it
think
land on my shoulders, right?
it,
As the end
it,
user
it is
who
a
imports things.
it is a combination of all of those elements that you mentioned. There was certainly, a benefit on the cost, but more important was the fact that the variability on the cost of LNG versus the cost of bunker and other type of marine diesel was, as you know, very significant changes throughout the years and even within a year, and having a fuel that doesn't really change significantly in price was a very good thing for everybody, for
When
us
did that
as well as for our customers who actually were able now to eliminate a lot of noise in the estimates of for budget of next years and so on in that sense as well.
Yeah, well, and investors in every business cycle want to see stability and predictability, right? And
Yep.
more than basically, it's almost more important than high cost is long-term viability. When was the totes changeover, and when did the rest of the industry sort of begin to follow in your footsteps? Small in the grand scheme of things as they may have been, but big in
I
terms of
I
innovation.
I have to say that I'm actually quite impressed about the number of people that has been building new tonnage with LNG as the main fuel. Uh, we're about to celebrate, 10 years since the introduction of our new chips, and I was actually at a conference last year, an IMO conference, and I was really surprised to hear that by this time this year or later this year, there's going to be close to 500 ships already built that are using LNG. And the expectation is that in the next 3 to 5 years, the number of LNG containers using container ships using LNG is going to be over 1,000 as well. So we feel very proud about the fact that we set up the standard and the mark, and that there's been a significant evolution. You also have to consider that a transition of that nature require a very good and reliable place to get the LNG. So, one of the reasons why we carry a couple of tanks in our vessel is because we only had, at the beginning of this project, or even today, we can say that the only alternative for sourcing the LNG is in Jacksonville. And that put us into a design of having been able to run the ships a couple of times without refueling. And I mean a couple of round trips into San Juan and Jacksonville. So we made that redundancy of LNG, even though we do our best to do refueling every single week. We have the capability to do a couple of round trips without much of any LNG refilling. We still have the diesel capability for which we can obviously be able to continue running the chips in case we have any issue with the LNG in that sense. So building those resiliency and reliability of service elements were fundamental in what we did try to accomplish with this as well.
You mentioned something that I want to expand on. You mentioned that Toad is a domestic carrier, which means you provide service between U.S. ports, which means you and all of your ships have to comply with the Merchant Marines Act of 1917, also known as the Jones Act, and the Jones Act carries a lot of stigma around it in a lot of different corridors, and I think a lot of people just frankly misunderstand exactly what it is. Um, I don't think we do. I think we have tried to do our due diligence in terms of digging into it, and we had a thoughtful conversation with the trade policy director at Cato Institute, Colin Graybow, who I know you're familiar with, who is one of the most active and loudest voices in the U.S. for the ultimate, the end of the Jones Act and replacing it with strengthening maritime industry in other ways. When I think about the Jones Act theoretically, or shipping or anything theoretically, greater supply means greater competition for businesses and prices are pressured downward. In theory, why would eliminating the Jones Act not bring a lower price point for imported fuels?
You know, very, 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 very simple, Sam. When you look at the way that the fuel is actually transported around the world, and what are the intermediaries behind those transactions? There's a lot of people that, in my opinion, are profiting from what should really be a very straightforward transaction between the entity that produced the fuel and the entity that needs in that sense. In the case of the Jones Act, it is extremely important for everything that we transport, not only fuels, but also all type of commodities that we have a very stable, reliable, and secure means of what we actually provide. We cannot afford having issues that will end up providing shortages and other problems that will affect the lifeline of the people that we serve. The reason why we only transport goods from Jacksonville, Florida, into San Juan, Puerto Rico, and then back into Jacksonville is because, again, the only way you can have a very strong supply chain velocity and even a lower total supply chain cost is by servicing these two ports and nothing in between. Uh, we've seen exercises where when you try to add an intermediate port in the equation, you can really not deliver the same type of value that our customers are requiring in that sense. When you have some of the supply chains on food commodities, just to give you an example, that go from farm to the table in Puerto Rico, you're speaking about 5 days, 4 to 5 days, so many times. This is why Puerto Rico, that is federally regulated by FDA like any other state of the nation, about claims of freshness, you know, it's very important that anything that we claim in the supermarkets to be fresh fully comply with those requirements, which are an average of more or less of 10 days. So when you look at the fruit, the vegetables, many proteins that are actually sold as fresh, they need the right supply chain velocity in order for the produce to make it to the shelf at the supermarkets and still be able to comply with that. And that's a critical element of the Jones Act. The Jones Act is also it also introduced a container size that you cannot find in the world, with the exception of probably the intranet in China or the intranet in Australia. But maritime wise, the 53 footer, which happens to be not only 13 foot longer, but also wider and taller, offers about 42% more capacity, which for many commodities, particularly like commodities, it is an amazing advantage for the cheaper. Actually, more than 50% of the containers that comes into Puerto Rico from the U.S., they're 53 footers. They were created on the basis of reducing the carbon footprint in the U.S. about 30 years ago, and just being part of the federal
Became the
highway
standard.
system, we became immediately a recipient of those containers that has been, benefiting a lot the cheapers in Puerto Rico for many different commodities. The security, the safety that relates to having our very own assets controlled by American people by American workers that yes, they actually do much better than many other mariners in total compensation. But at the end of the day, our profits as well as the profits uh, and the tax payments from our mariners and other related employees in the industry remains between Puerto Rico and the U.S. in the case of the U.S. Puerto Rico trade, and that is another significant contributor to the economy of both the United States as well as Puerto Rico in that sense.
So putting aside the economic benefits of the Jones Act or the economic risks of eliminating the Jones Act, one of the key purposes of that law was to provide for a civilian fleet, a merchant marine, in the event of needing to deputize a civilian fleet in moments of war. Is that a reality?
It,
Is
it,
the
it,
size of the
it,
civilian fleet today in the U.S. and around Puerto Rico, is that a realistic tool in our tool belt in the event of uh, something horrible happening in the region?
it is, and I'll go back to something very simple. You know, we had really seen in the last several decades how China has truly become a major powerhouse in the construction of chips. We know for a fact, as we clearly have a very good understanding of the cost of building a chip in the U.S. versus some of the numbers that we actually see coming out of China. And there's no doubt in any of our minds about a significant subsidy that has been done in China in order to take a supremacy on the construction of our chips. To say that today about 70% of the chips that are being built are being done in China is a very scary thing.
Yeah.
Then you have another little concentration in Korea and a few other places. And when you look at the U.S. and the way that our chip yards has been significantly affected by much lower and lower activity in construction, that really puts a significant threat to the nation. And so, sometimes you hear people saying, "Well, we're not in times of wars and there's no conflicts." Well, guess what? There's been plenty happening in the last couple of decades to make sure that we do not give up, the importance of having our very own fleet that will be needed not only to secure the moment, but also events that could happen in the future as well in that sense.
It's like the idea that, insurance doesn't matter until it does, right?
Yeah.
You don't, nobody likes to pay for insurance when they're healthy. But you definitely don't want to pay for it when you're not. And I think that you mentioned sort of the history of this. I think the Merchant Marine has a really storied role in military conflicts the U.S. has participated in. I'm thinking Dunkirk, I'm thinking Vietnam, even the Gulf War. And interestingly enough, two of the most important ships in the Vietnam conflict and then later in the Gulf War were the SS Mayaguez and the SS Ponce that were specifically servicing the island of Puerto Rico. Um,
Yeah.
in terms of industrial policy, domestic industrial policy, how do we reinvigorate the U.S. shipbuilding industry?
Well,
If we have something that's in place that looks somewhat like protectionism, where we have sort of a captured market for U.S. to U.S. port industry, how do we make what else can we do to make sure that what has been sort of asleep for decades comes back to life?
well, the President Trump earlier this year actually enacted this order, which is known as the U.S. Maritime Act, which is seeking for recommendations on how to really build back a very strong shipyard industry and all associated elements of the maritime sector. So there is a lot of working process going on at this time to provide a work frame of what should really be the type of investments and the opportunities to really reinforce the industry to be at a dominance position again sometime in the upcoming few decades. So we're very excited about that because the opportunity to create not only more jobs and greater economic value It's about making sure that we also bring the best innovation that we can in some of that activity as well. So we're very excited. We're many of us are currently, working on different ideas and recommendations on what should really be the next phase of a new not only chip jar industry but associated and ancillary other type of businesses that can be considered. If we look at Puerto Rico as a possible recipient of some of those benefits, we're thinking a lot about, hey, how you can actually make a better use of the land at the former U.S. Navy Rusi Roads facility. How can we actually even take Ponce into doing some activity that is really value added, rather than thinking that Ponce can actually be a transshipment point, which is being already proven empirically that it cannot be. There's no way for Ponce to compete with Caucedo in the Dominican Republic or Kingston in Jamaica. There's no chance for that type of opportunity for Ponce. But there could be a number of activities that could probably be worked out of Ponce that can give a good opportunity for that port to become more relevant and value added in that sense.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, I think in 2023, I was working with Scale AI and Juan Andre Caro, who's now the Deputy Secretary of NOAA. And the whole idea was, let's make sure we can do digital twin, smart logistic technology and use Ponce as a test bed. In part, and you mentioned China as a national security threat, the cranes, the ship to shore cranes that are not in use but could be in use in Ponce, that exist in Ponce, are mostly made in China and are the ones that China deploys around the world. And so when we think about critical infrastructure and hackable critical infrastructure, making sure that we have in homegrown expertise on logistics efficiency is super important. And we're going to get into the logistics center of excellence that you're working on building right now. But staying on critical infrastructure for a second, how are your port activities powered? And what's the future of securing or hardening that electrical supply in Puerto Rico?
You know, the nature of our business is so important and critical that we don't have any other choice than to operate with a backup generators in case we have any interruption from the power plant that provide energy to our terminals, and we're right next to one of the biggest in the Central San Juan over there. So it is a very costly proposition to have power backup generators to operate highly energy consumption assets. We've been masterminding and thinking a lot about, hey, how we can actually transition into a microgrid that can actually be more efficient, more cost affordable, and as LNG is certainly becoming a bigger and bigger fuel, and for us to be obviously LNG user for a great number of years already, we're looking at alternatives to have a lesser dependency on the grid from the state in that situation. Even though we look forward to significant breakthrough on the replacement of the obsolete and all asset base that is actually used in Puerto Rico for power generation. Uh, we feel that in the meantime, many stakeholders will have to pursue their own microgrid. You've seen what's already happening on the bioscience manufacturing sites in the island. There's already a significant portion of them that are using LNG and other fuels as well. And there's a lot of different projects in the pipeline right now, not only now for the bioscience sector, but also for the commercial sector as well. The evolution of the green projects, meaning the solar and other. So we feel like a highly diverse base of power generation it's going to be really the best thing that can happen to Puerto Rico sometime in the upcoming decade and so and so.
You don't own that facility. You have a long-term lease there. It belongs to the Puerto Rico Ports Authority, and the Ports Authority has been engaged previously in energy-minded projects. I'm thinking about the dredging of the San Juan Bay, which just allows not only bigger ships, but ships to turn around and spend less time, which means less fuel in the really in the heart of San Juan. Is this something that they're open to? Are they? And I know that they've managed projects with regards to cogeneration at the airport. They're thinking about operational continuity as much as emissions or cost, right? Um, your primary is Luma or the grid. Your backup is a diesel generator. What is your sense that the Port Authority's appetite is for not only greater reliability of operations, but ultimately the economic benefits that get passed down to the end user?
The Port Authority has a very good will on how they can actually provide some type of support. But the reality about the Port Authority of Puerto Rico, contrary to the Port Authority in many other places in the U.S., is that the Port Authority in Puerto Rico is a landlord. They have a piece of land that they actually lease to you, and everything that goes on as an investment, it has to be fully private. So if you look at the maritime sector in general in Puerto Rico, you can say we've been a sort of a private public partnership for decades already in that sense, because almost every single penny that is invested in the terminals is coming from us. There's only one responsibility that carries the Port Authority, which are mostly about the fenders and the bollards in the waterfront. But the rest of the investment, they actually are very much borne by us, the terminal operators and the liners, and that obviously enacted that our contracts are very long-term contract in that sense. Since we have to make millions of dollars of investment in those facilities, we certainly have to make sure that we get the right return, which comes along with the terms that traditionally can be in the neighborhood of 20, 30, 40 years of a leasing agreement. There's a, there's a good element associated with the timing of a tonnage as well, but tonnage that can actually last, 35, 40, 40 years, depending on the duration of the steel made. And and having all this, financially speaking, alignment is fundamental. The type of investment that we have to make in order to continue running a very efficient terminal, a very efficient stevedoring operation for
I
the
don't I
vessel
don't
as
think
well.
the point that you guys have that much flexibility over your terminal there, I think cannot be understated. And this is not to throw any shade at the Port Authority in particular, but we know that government entities move slower than private ones, and so to be able to look at what's efficient for your operations and be able to make a decision, I think that again that can't be understated for the future of the energy, or excuse me, well, future of the energy sector for sure, but future of the logistics sector more broadly. Let's get into the future of logistics in Puerto Rico. You're responsible, Eduardo, for a new logistics center of excellence in partnership with the University of Puerto Rico and Mayaguez. When you think about island logistics, what is the most inefficient area of island logistics, and what can be done almost immediately to make up gains in that area? And maybe sort of as a follow-up question, how does energy play a role in that?
Energy is very important. And as you know, even though we have a significant concentration of the people and the commerce in the greater San Juan area, which is probably about two-thirds of the nearly or more, a little over 3 million people in the island. The rest of the island, it brings a significant challenge as far as the distances, and as far as roadability, particularly when you go to the mountain area in the center of the island. So with a significant concentration of people and businesses in the greater San Juan, that is, that's a significant, density that we have to deal with it, and it comes with many different challenges, including the traffic. When you think about, how much time sometimes the a truck or a delivery van takes, for servicing a number of customers on a day, there's a lot of time that is totally wasted just getting stuck somewhere in the traffic system. So finding a great creativity on how to service, different sectors is going to be fundamental. What type of activity can actually be done during the nighttime, so you can actually decongest as much as you can the traffic during the day. What type of other projects can be work, that can actually contribute to that. How efficiently you can actually map your logistic routes and other elements to get the best out of it. So the Center of Excellence is about the research of different critical programs. It's about creating innovative solutions. So then we can actually have a greater use of the assets, and a more efficient, operations for everybody. So we're very thrilled about this investment that we're doing in our parent company had, basically pledged for $10 million to be invested at a rate of $1 million per year upon the university and the center, complying with the agreements about it. And the reason for such a significant investment in a very long period is because we do recognize that a number of projects are going to be taking longer than others. And particularly when we start dealing with projects in the order of artificial intelligence and other factors, it's gonna take a little longer. We also look for a greater participation from the industrial and commerce community to start giving opportunities to the students of the university for different type of projects, including internships, including co-op programs, including capstone, and many other things that are going to be able to prepare much better our students in the different universities in that sense. We're making also an investment with the Polytechnic University, but that program is more about the transportation and logistic talent management. That is actually more relevant to the short and mid-term of a talent development needed in transportation and logistics in the island. So, courses, some of them at a associate degree level, some of them at a certification level, that can actually fulfill needs in the industry very quickly as well, in that sense. And that is very exciting because that is a big challenge that we have today, starting from something basic as students in school and even university, that they need to know with good clarity what transportation and logistics entail, and what are the opportunities and the job opportunities that they can pursue if they have a better understanding about it. So part of that program is really starting, even going at the high school level, to start providing a notion or information to the students at the high school, to be able to understand better the transportation and logistics sector, and probably based on that information, choose in that path with a greater conscience of what they can accomplish on it sometime in the future. So we're excited about both program. In the Polytechnic University, is about $200,000 a year for a period of 10 years as well. The advisory boards that we have for both the universities, they're different. with a different purpose, obviously based on the purpose of the program at the different university. That advisory board is there to provide also good direction about what are really the needs in transportation and logistics. What are some of the best practices that are happening, so they can incorporate those at the curriculum and at the different program offerings at the university level as well.
We're really interested and have had a number of conversations at the Energy Forum about workforce. And I've cited a number before that the US is about 500,000 electricians short of what it needs right now. And that's a remarkable number. The Navy alone needs close to 140,000 electricians over the next 5 or 10 years. Those folks are in eighth grade right now. When you think specifically about the logistics talent pipeline, how do you quantify sort of the tightest bottleneck of skill sets that is needed right now? Is it truck drivers? Is it stevedoring? Is it
It's
longshoremen? What's the skill set that needs to be developed in this industry that, changes the
I
math
think
on
I
the
think there's a
competitive?
very genuine scarcity in almost every aspect, every sector within the industry. Uh, I would not say stevedoring and terminal are actually a challenge at this time, because it is not the case. And you know the the resource of organized labor is being historically, very well fed by relative and other people they know, and that pool is in great shape in my personal opinion as far as number. But when you look in trucks drivers, yes, that is a critical area. Let's take into consideration that everything that comes to Puerto Rico comes, a significant portion out of the mainland, and the mainland is been already suffering for nearly a decade with an scarcity of more than 100,000 drivers, and that
It's
is
a shockingly high number. I mean, it's amazing.
that is an issue, and I think in the case of Puerto Rico, we have been very blessed in finding the means to associate with a number of great partners in that sense, and to say that when you take one of our vessels with nearly 1,000 containers, probably about more than half of those do require an inland solution, mostly a trucking solution, and to say that many of our ships, we do not fail, not a single container to make it over on time to the ship. That's an amazing record. But the average of the nation is actually 70%, meaning that out of 10, three deliveries, they don't show on time. And if we were to be subject to that rate in the trade of U.S. to Puerto Rico on containers, I'll tell you, we would be living on a heck of a crisis. Not the case, but again, we have been able to control that situation. When you look at Puerto Rico, we're not in a very different spot. You have to remember that there's a generational issue association with this as well. The new generation, they're not looking forward to be on a truck in the mainland for several days out of their house. They prefer to leave their house early in the morning and come back sometime in the afternoon, the same day. There's a and the same situation happens to the maritime sector with the mariners. This is not the same mariners that a number of decades ago they were actually spending sometimes even half of the year traveling around the world in a ship and not seeing the family and having a very limited communication via mail and others. Today, that's not the profile of the mariner who wants to be that many weeks in the water. For that reason, we try to accommodate as many amenities possible, so we can actually attract and keep them in our business. I'll give you a good example. We make our very best in creating a new shape that provides great accommodation, great food, great connectivity. Our ships right now they use Starlink, and that offers the mariner and the officers the opportunity to have connectivity
Oh, they
every
probably have
single
better
day.
internet on the ship than they do at home.
And it's yeah, probably be the case with some of them. But the fact is that we continue to understand and to adapt to the reality of what is actually the preferences and the aspiration of the new. So when you look at some of the careers in the mariners engineering based career, we're trying also to make sure that we communicate with good clarity the amazing and good opportunities for students at the high school level and others in pursuing those opportunities, and how we actually create a type of rotation that is suitable to their aspiration and preferences about greater proximity to the family. Uh, in not very long period to be apart in that sense. So we continue, understanding, listening very carefully about their needs, and we are just doing our best to be flexible and adaptable to
Is
everything that we can.
is the trend that we're seeing pick up and actually maybe that's not the right way to think about it. I think innovation is somewhat plateauing here, or gains in innovation are perhaps not nearly as great as they were. Um, but automated driving trucks and logistics to, from the port of Los Angeles to Denver or Las Vegas, or some of these long haul trips before they become manned trucks again and go the last mile. Is that a reality for Puerto Rico? Is that a trend that the island can take advantage of? Or is the nature of
I,
population density and the roads and signage, or I don't know, is there a barrier for that to become a reality here?
if you would have asked me this question 30, 40 years ago, I would have said that I wouldn't see any of that in my lifetime. But there's a reality that is progressing, that is evolving, and I think it's unstoppable. I think all of many of these solutions are going to continue getting refined and improved, and it's going to be very important to accomplish that as well, because on the other hand, we do have a population decrease issue on the world, and particularly Puerto Rico is not about not being the exception. It's about being one of the worst. The birth rate of Puerto Rico is actually the third lowest of all the jurisdictions in the world. Who would have ever figured something like that on a country that still has very strong Latin elements associated with, and to say that the birth rate in the United States is bigger than in Puerto Rico, and to say that there's been now 12 years, or probably moving into 13, with a loss between mortality and natality of nearly 500,000 people. It's an issue, and my finding the means for AI to help deal with that situation is going to be fundamental. I still believe that we have an obligation to continue understanding the limitations for Johnston not to consider uh, uh, having more children, and to find the means to incentivize and motivate for that to happen. I think is important. But the declining is out there. It's happening all over the world, and and there's no way we will be able to continue fulfilling the responsibilities of all the different type of businesses and responsibilities in commerce if we don't integrate more and more the use of AI and other elements as well.
Let's think about some additional innovations here. Automation is really addressing a workforce challenge as much as anything, but also efficiency. But I think it's trying to unclog a bottleneck in the talent world more than anything. When we think about energy, what's the next innovation in shipping that's going to reduce energy and energy costs, energy use, energy volatility, and again, I'm thinking all of this is a proxy to economic viability and competitiveness and end user cost, right? Because we're not reducing energy costs in shipping for the sake of reducing energy costs in shipping. We're doing it because you provide a better service at the end of the day for the people who need to ship things from A to B. So when we think about innovation, maybe automation aside, what's going to hit the shipping world that really affects its energy use?
I do believe that in the short term, many companies are very responsibly, including ourselves, evaluating different alternate fuels that can actually deliver a better value and a more reliable, need in the future. Uh, so this is why a number of companies are, analyzing hydrogen. They're analyzing ammonia. They're analyzing other means of fuel as a possible, next generation in that sense. And I do believe that the way we actually introduce LNG in a very breakthrough in the maritime commercial industry, things will continue evolving in some fashion in the upcoming decades, for sure. As far as the automation, auto man vessels and that type of thing, as I mentioned to you, I don't say anymore that type of thing cannot happen. I think there's a lot of great minds, thinking about how it can be done and what is actually the next generation of automation and self driven assets, and I think that's going to continue evolving. I think at what pace it's going to happen, I cannot make an educated inference on it at this point.
Is offshore gas storage a viable long-term solution for Puerto
I
Rico?
think it is. I think it could. I believe it is something that could probably have a potential in that sense. There's been so many great things about the use of our coastline and resources for decades, and there's been some very little, trial and errors or attempts, and I do believe that there's a potential around our waters, and that could really be exploited and better take advantage of it sometime in the future.
What about
In that
offshore?
sense,
What about offshore nuclear?
I think a lot of what we are hearing now about the nuclear safeguards and is very encouraging, to say the least. I think educating the population is going to be a critical element in how to prove the 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 security, the safety of nuclear assets that have been already demonstrating that they're not only very safe, but they're also very efficient. So is that evolution something that we should probably take advantage of? I think so. I think
It-
that.
it-
And,
it's also such a proven technology in the sense
yeah,
that, and we just talked with Jesus Nunez, who's the CEO of the Nuclear Alternative Project, and I would encourage anybody who's listening or watching this with questions or doubts or ideas about how nuclear could play a role in Puerto Rico's future to not only listen to that episode and conversation with Jesus, but he's going to be presenting on at the Puerto Rico Clean Energy Week event in September around Puerto Rico's nuclear option. We heard from one of his colleagues, Eddie Guerra, last year, and again our friend Giselle Lloyd from the Berkeley Lab, who is involved in nuclear research all over the world
yeah.
and has studied island energy problems, is going to be presenting on nuclear at our upcoming event. So I agree. I think it's really encouraging. I think it's a huge
I,
opportunity.
and I think we need to take advantage of our lessons from the past. Let's use LNG as a good example. You might recall during the Governor Fortunio administration, the project about the pipeline from the south of the island into the north of the island. I believe a project that have a lot of merits, but it wasn't properly communicated to the people of the island. And this idea that would create a significant unsafe situation for the people across the mountain line in Puerto Rico. Literally killed the project. It was an issue about not communicating well and about dedicating the time and the best clarity on the safe elements associated with. The same is happening with the nuclear. I mean, if you actually interview 10 people in the street in Puerto Rico today and you ask them about this subject, it's very likely that 9 or even 10 of them, all of them, are going to say, well, that's not good. And so the perception of what is actually a nuclear installation of any kind is very bad. I think I
I
think our
actually think, and
a
and
newer
and
generation might be able to say, hey, it's good, but I do believe that the majority of the people of the island are going to be very reluctant unless very well informed and very well educated about the merits and the safer elements of a nuclear power plants.
I actually think it's worse than that, Eduardo. I think that 7, 8, or 9 out of 10 would say they have no issue with it, and actually the expectation from political leadership is that 9 or 10 out of 10 do have a problem with it, and never do the linking research to say, is this actually something constituencies are interested in? And so there's a fear that it's a non-starter before ever being considered. I hear from all sorts of people privately that nuclear makes all the sense in the world, and then publicly they say it's too radioactive, no pun intended, to entertain. And I think that one of the things that Jesus and his team at NAP have proven through their research is there's a lot more openness amongst the people of Puerto Rico to explore the viability of it than the perception that nobody would go for it. And so making sure that
That's
that
that's
voice is
that's
elevated
great to
is
hear.
it'd be great. Yeah.
That is actually awesome to hear, Sam. I wonder how much of that possible reaction from many people is actually on the fact that they're fed up with
Yeah,
the
I think that,
fragility
hey,
and
look, I
the
think it has something to do with
inconvenience
it.
of the actual system, and that they're willing to really try something new. Uh, for all of us that had really done the research and the search of information on it, it's good. I think we should really go after that, because even the compact element behind a nuclear power plant is amazing. In such
It
a
is.
very small, footprint, you can actually accomplish so much in generation, again, in a very safe manner. I I, I think it should really take probably installing one or two, and so people can actually understand, what a great feeling is to have something so reliable, giving you assurance that you are very unlikely to have any problems,
If
in
you
getting electricity.
if you want a an encouraging, feel-good, enthusiastic, technological, and data-driven presentation, make sure you're there for Jesus's and Giselle's presentations in September. I look forward to it because it's one of these things where it's like
Looking
Puerto
forward to.
Rico doesn't need to reinvent the wheel. Let's take advantage of what's happened elsewhere and really excel. All right, Eduardo, last couple of questions for you. What lesson do you have from your days as general manager of Unilever that shaped the way you think about the island's economic trajectory today?
Is That's a very good question. I think about those days that there was a significant, consumerism in the island. The uh, the total wealth of the people was in a much better condition than today. Uh, a significant portion of that stability came out of a very strong industrial sector that was by far between direct and indirect jobs, close to 50% of the employment in the island. And many of them were very well remunerated jobs. So for many families at all levels, the mobility to have a better life was actually there. The people investment on a second property, particularly on the upper middle class, was there. The number of autos, as you know, lacking a mass transportation system, put us in a binding of having literally one car per every member that is qualifiable to drive in the house. I mean, it was a very different time. I think there was a greater sense of stability, and what we've seen obviously in the last decade and a half has been a significant deterioration that not only affected us by the decreasing population, but even by the people who left the island and is seeking for better opportunities in the mainland. I have a lot of respect for everybody that is remaining in the island and that is putting a significant effort and passion to drive the island into a better place. But I never seen so many challenges at once hitting us. Challenges in the education system, challenges in the health system, challenges in the industry, in challenges with the energy, being the energy and the water utilities, a backbone of stability and emotionally very important elements to have a healthy society in many elements. It's a very challenging period, but I'm actually happy to say that the more I talk to people who can actually have the meaning for influence and to motivate for us to continue seeking for the very best for the island, it's actually very encouraging in that sense.
To what extent is Puerto Rico and are Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic following the same trajectory? Is Puerto Rico 30 years ahead of the Dominican Republic, or are they diverged so significantly that they're no longer heading in the same direction?
It is a very good question, and I said this already twice now because as you know, I didn't have this question from you before, and what I see is it's evidently a jurisdiction, meaning the Dominican Republic, who has made amazing strides in becoming a better and better and stronger society. Uh, there's one element which, in my opinion, is a little conflictive, which is when you still have a significant portion of the population living with a minimum wage of $400 a month. It's really a major concern, in my opinion.
Oh, totally.
Um,
And the GDP
big,
per capita in the Dominican Republic is still 10 or $11,000. So,
it,
does are the great strides akin to Puerto Rico in the 60s or 70s to say, look, we're going to become a modernized, industrialized nation. And maybe 50 years from now, the Dominican Republic will look more like Puerto Rico, or I mean, is there divergence there where it says, okay, no, we're going to capitalize on
I,
that and really just be a
you know,
fast
when
moving economy
when I
in Latin America?
when I look at the leaders in the Dominican Republic in the last 20 years, I have to give most of them a lot of credit for the way they have been, leading over the country to get better and better and better. They have been consistently growing for the last 20 some years,
At like
and
4 to 7%. I mean, it's amazing.
yeah, and what is actually a good proof of what they are doing to be paying off is that when they are seeking for breakthrough opportunities about improving, they know, and I mean past presidents, they know how to hold hand together to do the ask for the next evolution on what they need. Just to give you a very quick example, you know, we're aspiring and seeking for greater reshoring and nearshoring opportunities for Puerto Rico. They're doing the same. They're visiting the U.S. Congress and other figures, and they're doing it in a fashion that is actually, in my opinion, very clever. The president of the Dominican Republic several weeks ago was in Washington, and he was accompanied by other former presidents. from different parties, but they were out there asking for the same, for the opportunities for them to continue growing on nearshoring, and reshoring opportunities. And and if you look at the growth of the medical device sector in the last 20 years, it's been high rocketing to the extent that what used to be probably the number one industry, and I mean within the industrial segment, not including the tourism, because they still have an economy that is significantly driven by the tourism. But the industrial sector has becoming and is been growing more and more and more. And in some segments, like the medical devices, they just continue, doing some significant strikes. And when you see the textile industry, that certainly was a big industry for them. Some of that have been shifting out of the Dominican Republic over to Central America and other places. So they have been, putting in my opinion, the right priorities in segments that are more or better contributors to their economy. And it is one of those places that you can go a few times a year, and even visually, you're gonna see some of that significant growth going on. Yeah, the capital, Santo Domingo, is still very hectic as far as the traffic and so on. But you need to look beyond what is happening in Santo Domingo as a city that is obviously becoming, from a traffic point of view, by far worse than anything in Puerto Rico. And that's a lot to say for sure.
No, and it's a gap I think we'll be grateful for.
But I have a lot of respect for many friends and great leaders that I know over there, and I think in our case we certainly need to continue unifying ourselves and in our purposes, because we got plenty to be unified in the energy area, in the industrial area, in the health, in security, if we really want to take the island to the next level. So, I'm encouraged. I'm actually positive that we should continue, becoming a factor and be a contributor in the process of leading Puerto Rico to a much better place as well. And I'm excited for what you guys have been doing in the Energy Forum for some time, and how you guys have been managing the diversity of the different opportunities in energy in a very responsible fashion as well, without aligning specifically to one type of energy evolution versus others. So I'm actually very honored to participate today with you on this, and look forward to continue hitting a lot of good things coming out of the forum.
Excellent. Eduardo, we'll leave it there. Thank you for the insightful conversation. Look forward to seeing you in person again soon, and joining us in September for the Puerto Rico Clean Energy Week event at Vivo Beach Club. My friend, thank you, and we'll talk soon.